Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Do we know if Sue is on?
I don't see Sue yet.
Okay,
We'll give her a minute if that's okay with everybody.
absolutely. But I assume she was attending, right, Bob? Is that correct?
Yes, when we set the meeting up and the mayor is shaking his head affirmative, so.
For sure.
Perfect,
Correct.
perfect.
We're missing Randy also. I assume she will be on.
No, she won't be.
Oh, she won't? Okay. Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot.
I think I see Sue coming in down there.
But can somebody remind me on Zoom how I changed the name from my daughter's name to my name? Not that that's all that critical, but
I don't know.
I thought you could right click on it or something like that, but
Morgan, do you have audio? Don, you want that instead of Danielle, you prefer to be called Don today?
yeah.
Okay.
I only brought it up because we were waiting,
No, you're fine. I think we can administratively do that.
There you go. Somebody did it. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Morgan. Okay, I thought we had Mike. I thought that was Sue.
Mike, your audio is off.
Can you hear me now?
Now you're on. Thank you.
Yep, good.
I will text Sue and see if she planning on being on.
Is somebody outside? I think I hear birds.
Mhm.
I'm outside.
Oh, you're outside. Okay.
Bob, do you need to take roll and should we approve the minutes? Maybe we should go ahead and do that and hope that Sue joins us.
Yeah, we can. Sue is attempting to get in,
Oh, okay.
but we can go ahead and get started while she does that. Pam, are you sending Sue?
I was, but it sounded like you had contacted her or she contacted you, so I didn't. I'm happy to contact her, but
I can contact her.
Meanwhile, Hunt's suggestion is good. Why don't we do a roll?
Okay, I'll go
call?
ahead and get started with the roll. Show Miss Weber is absent. Mr. Aiken, present. Mr. Conrad,
Here.
Mr. Goldberg,
Here,
Mr. Frederickson,
Here.
Mr. Wislinski,
Here.
Mr. Prost,
Here,
Mr. Roberts,
Here,
and Miss Fabic.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Should we go ahead and see if we can get the minutes approved?
I'll move the approval.
Second,
Okay, any discussion about that? Were there any updates or changes?
No,
Okay, hopefully I'm not out of order then if I call for a vote. Everybody in favor signify by saying aye.
aye,
Aye.
Okay, any nays? No, okay, minutes stand as submitted. Now, that's about as far as I feel like I can go. I don't have anything else.
Mr. Vice Chair, so if you want to go ahead and ask for an approval of the agenda, we could get that out of the way as well.
Okay, perfect. Anybody want to signal a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll so move.
Okay. Everyone in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, it's not a very difficult agenda, so.
Okay.
um,
So we did, just so everybody knows, we sent Sue, she was getting the link and everything set up, so she'll be here in a minute.
Okay,
But if it's okay with the group, we'll go ahead and get started. Before we start the PowerPoint presentation, I did want to provide a little bit of background. First of all, my sincere appreciation to Pam Wrights, especially, and also Joanne, in the midst of the state auditors being in the midst of finalizing our internal audit, in the midst of a board meeting, in the midst of a transition. They put some numbers together that we hope to take to the Board of Aldermen at our retreat. So what I'm hoping for, and the mayor and Sue, if you're on, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think any feedback we can get from all of you on this information prior to taking it to the board would be very helpful. I will also say up front, I was a little bit startled with the drastic decline in fund balance as Pam and Joanne ran these new numbers. So it appears to be a worst case scenario than I recall when we discussed needing revenue prior. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Pam and Joanne to kind of walk through the information again, what they've put together for us to present to the board. And I hope any feedback you all have on this information. Pam, does that sound good to you and Joanne?
Sounds good.
Okay.
and just a quick, hey, Sue, welcome on. We approved the minutes and we approved the agenda, and Bob just kicked us off and we're just about to start the presentation.
Awesome. I have to apologize to everyone. I had one of those moments. We have our wonderful 12-year-old grandson here, and well, if you're a grandparent, but I totally didn't mean to blow it off, but it would appear that way. But anyway,
No worries, we'll excuse you. this one time.
fortunately, I'm out of the shower, so. And thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Okay, go ahead with Pam then.
Okay, I think hopefully Morgan has put our PowerPoint up so that we will be able to see that. There we go. Okay. I fix my screen a little bit here. So the idea is hopefully that you will give us some feedback, as Bob said, on this presentation. We looked at, excuse me, a lot of numbers, and we're trying to kind of synthesize it, summarize it, put it in a way that was not too overwhelming with numbers, but still showed the what we wanted to convey. So with that, we'll start with the first slide. This should look familiar to you, our kind of standard fund summary, our fund balance summary. So this has been updated. The 2021, I don't know if you can, sorry, excuse me. The 2021 beginning balance is based on the audit. So those numbers are updated from when we did the budget presentation on 2021. The revenue estimates are the same. The current budget request is the 2021 budget request that you've seen before when you reviewed the budget, but it also includes any reappropriations we did from 2020 for those ongoing projects and any supplemental appropriations. And I think there's only been just the one supplemental in the general fund for the management audit. So you can see the change in the fund balance and then our projected 2021 ending fund balance should we receive all the revenue that we anticipate and should we spend the entire budget. So those are the assumptions there to start, basically to start us off, then looking at projections for 2022. Next
So
slide.
can I just ask you, am I correct? You like to keep 50% is your minimum requirements for the general fund balance?
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. You can see that we are projecting at the end of 2021, 66%. The 50% is in our code. So that is what we have to keep in there unless the board authorizes something less than that.
And then you don't know, this doesn't include any possible additional federal funding for COVID or anything?
That's correct.
Okay.
The 2021 beginning balance does include what we already received in the prior grant, but does not anticipate the new grant at this point.
Do we think any of that grant money comes in this calendar year, or is that more 2022, do you think?
I believe we will get some of that in this calendar year. I just don't know when, and I don't know the mechanism yet for receiving that. I don't know if you know anything more about that, Bob, if you've heard anything through MML or any of the cities.
No, as I understand, the funds have not been released.
Do you have any idea how much funds you might receive?
Our allocation is 2 million, and they indicate that the eligible expenses are limited, but replenishing lost revenue is currently one of the eligible expenses. And Pam, I think, and Joanne have that number at 1.5 million. So and it's over 4 years, right?
Right.
So.
What was that 1.5 million again, Bob, that you
That's
quoted?
that's what we project as our lost revenue currently. We will continue to experience lost revenue, business license sales tax.
And that is a principal funding criteria from the federal government, lost revenue?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And that will be ongoing until things turn around. So that could take a while to recoup those revenues, correct?
Correct.
The revenue recoupment, if I'm saying that right, is through 2024. So we have a 21, 22, 23, and 24. So we have 4 years that we can recoup that.
How are you computing that 66%? Are there two numbers on this slide that?
Yes, if you take the ending fund balance in the general fund and compare it to the current budget request. So the 66,962,000 is 66% of the 10,618,000.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So if you got $1.5 million of additional COVID funds, you would be at like 82% general fund ending balance.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
And And I would point out is, since we're talking about it, that even though that 2 million we can receive, over that 4-year period, it should be considered a kind of one-time receipt of revenue. It's not something that's going to be ongoing that we can kind of build into operating. So
It's
the
not
use
going to
of
be a
that-
certain amount each year?
Well, as I understand it, I don't really, actually, I really don't know how we're going to receive it, but what I read was that we're supposed to receive 50% of it as soon as it's allocated, and then another 50% 1 year later. But then we justify that amount over that 4-year period. So I'm thinking that we wouldn't really be able to recognize the full amount of that revenue until we would show either the total lost revenue or expenses that would be that are that we can
COVID-related, yeah.
allocate to that, right? So we might have it in cash, but not really be able to recognize it as revenue immediately. We
Okay,
couldn't spend it,
right.
but those are all things that we're still trying to find out.
As we move forward also then with this for long-range planning, and I know the focus of today was at the end was not going to be our longest range plans, but I would think at some point, wouldn't it be good to look at what our trends were prior to COVID?
We will have to do that because we have to set our base year. So there's a formula, a calculation that we'll go through that will give us our average, at least with the revenues, our average revenue increase over the past, now I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 years to set our base year. And then we'll compare each year going forward, basically being 21, 22, 23, and 24 to that base year to show what our revenue loss would be. I'm not sure if that was Alderman Allen, if that's what you were referring to, but
Yes,
we
thank you.
obviously.
Okay, thanks.
Are we ready to move on to the next slide? This graph you've seen before. It's just been updated for the 2021 budget. It shows you all of our revenue sources and where we receive the bulk of our money. So you can see that 48% of our revenue comes from sales tax. Obviously, that was the hardest hit in the pandemic. Then the next largest is licenses, permits. That fluctuates based on the economy. That also went down due to COVID a bit. I think we're seeing that come back. Utilities gross receipts tax is the next highest source of revenue. That also was affected by COVID. So the majority of our revenues are really affected by the economy. Just something to keep in mind when we're talking about in the future new revenue sources. Any questions on that? Okay, let's look at expenditures. And just a category breakdown of our 2021 budget. You can see that the majority of our expenses, you look at police there at 29%, and then fire and ambulance at 27%. So 56% of our budget that's all funds, goes to public safety. If you add in the courts and prosecution, it brings us up to 58%. Those are generally how our expenditures are broken down. And this doesn't change very much annually. Well, it would change in roads and some of the capital, depending on what capital projects, obviously, that we have going on, roads, parks, and the municipal building. Any questions there? Okay.
A
The
quick
next
question
slide.
on stormwater improvements. Is that something that has a finite end, or is that something that is going to be basically ongoing in perpetuity?
So Mayor, the stormwater, we do have a 20-year or 20+ year plan with improvements slated ongoing. So we're in design, construction. So that is an ongoing program.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
So to clarify then, Bob, that's 20 years from now? Or always moving that?
I believe we have projects 20 years out, and they continue to come in from residents on issues, stormwater issues.
Okay.
Just wanted to show you where we were kind of year to date with our sales tax receipts. So after 6 months of collections, reading kind of right to left, a little backwards here maybe. So 6 months of collection, we've collected in the general fund 61% of what we anticipated we would collect for the year. So we're doing well based on our estimated excuse me, revenues for 2021. The next column over, the 20 to 21% change, shows you our year-to-date collections compared to same time frame 2020 to 2021. So as a reminder that when we receive funds, those are funds that were actually collected at the retail location 2 months prior. So these numbers that we're looking at here and comparing 20 to 21, the 2020 year to date is really November of 19 through April of 2020. So that's just really the April of 2020 was just the start of the pandemic. So we only really have, you figure March and April, half of March and a full month of April, where we had the effects of the pandemic in that year to date. And then the 2021 year to date, of course, is, that would be November of 2020 through April of 2021, all COVID. So, so it's not surprising at all that we're still down in the general fund and kind of flat in the other ones, because we're comparing, even though I think our revenues are going back up a little bit in sales tax, we're comparing to still really comparing to pre-COVID numbers. So we're going to be down compared to the 2020 numbers, if that makes any sense at all.
And dramatically down from 2019, which did not have a COVID effect.
Right. Now, you have to remember in 19 that we were still receiving some of that kind of extra revenue from the PGA tournament. Part of that didn't come in until early 20 or early 19, even though the PGA tournament was held in 18, we received the sales tax about half of it, which was, I think, about 200,000 or so in 19. So that kind of skews the 2019 numbers a little bit. So we didn't anticipate really in 2020 that we would receive quite as much. We wouldn't have received that extra bump. But then again, we also had the pandemic. So.
And Pam, just to, and I appreciate that, it's an excellent point. That PGA money was in the capital improvement and the park stormwater, since it's in the annexed area.
Yeah.
Not in the general fund. Okay.
Remind me on an overall basis, because, we had strong performance from the hardware stores and the grocery stores, but overall, our collections in 2020 were how much below our budget in sales tax, retail sales tax?
Below our budget, I don't have those numbers with me, I'm afraid. I only have what they were compared to the actual, which was about the 5% there.
Okay,
I think it was about 10 to 11% below what we had anticipated. Let me.
That's fine. That's good.
The 11% is what sticks in my mind. I don't have it with me. Any other questions on sales tax? Okay. Slide. Just a reminder on property tax. We discussed this quite a bit last year. The property tax rates obviously are set each year by the Board of Aldermen. Current property tax is set at 0. The city can increase its property tax rate in a non-reassessment year, so that would be in even numbered years, up to the cap. And in 2020, that cap was about 46 cents. We could do that via public hearing. It would not have to go to a vote. So the next time we could do that, obviously, would be in 2022. That 46 cents, whatever that cap is, will depend on, of course, on our assessed value, CPI at that time. So that would vary a little bit. And obviously, we discussed this during budget time last year. The next slide gets more into where we wanted to start, start talking about where we are and where our estimates are. So 2022 estimates. So we took our 2021 estimate from that prior slide, plugged it into our starting fund balance there prior year, the 6.9 million. We estimated revenues, and just to make it a little simpler, we estimated revenues at an increase of 2% a year. And then the estimated expenditures are estimated at 3% a year. Now, the reason I have that the expenditures increasing a little bit higher is that's more consistent to, I know the last couple of years haven't been normal years, so it's hard to look at those. But if you look at prior years, generally the fire and EMS contract, which is 40% of the and we're just looking at general fund here. So about 40% of our general fund budget is that fire and dispatch, fire EMS dispatch costs. So that's 40%. That's going to go up CPI. Unless, of course, we do something different with the contract. And that's been closer to the 3%. Personnel costs are about 50% of our general fund budget. So even though we have some control over how much we increase salaries, we don't have a lot of control over the benefit costs, the pension, the medical. Those are going to go up based on what's happening, obviously, in those industries, what's happening for pension, what's happening in the investment market, et cetera. So I really would be uncomfortable lowering that 3% very much if you want to, and trying to do it across the board. Obviously, we could go in line by line and do that differently, but I didn't have time to do that. So with those estimates, we're looking at ending 2022 of about 5.5, almost 5.5 million in fund balance, which really hits us right at that 50% level that we need to be at based on code. Now, if you carry that forward, obviously into 2023, 24, 25, and 26, obviously you're bringing in, your expenditures are going up faster than your revenues, your fund balance is going to drop. Absent any other source of revenue, of course, we don't have anything else added in here. And you can see how quickly that fund balance drops. So if you wanted to keep the fund balance at 50%, you can see that our shortage there at the bottom. So in 2023, almost $2 million, which would, if you looked at it, is in how much property tax would it take to increase that? It would be 19 cents. So you remember our property tax, 10 cents of property tax brings us in about $1 million a year. So you can see where we would have to go. And these are based on if we started the property tax in that year where the funding is low. If we started the property tax, and I should have maybe done an estimate on this, if we started the property tax in 2022, then obviously that is going to build, and you would need, by 2026, you wouldn't need 85 cents because you would already be building some of that revenue into your fund balance sooner rather than later. So this is just to show you before we start looking at the fire options, where we are with just our general fund revenues compared to expenditures.
Pam, this is a very, very important slide, and thank you. It indicates we're in big problems, even without looking at these very expensive alternatives on fire and ambulance. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pam,
And
I
this-
was wondering, you're assuming a 2% increase in revenue. When I look nationally at estimates for the economy, it seems like a lot of experts are projecting the economy is going to grow much, much greater than 2% per year in the next few years. Now, I don't know if we want to be overly optimistic and assume higher increases, but I'm wondering if that 2% is too low.
And it certainly could be, and we can do some sensitivity analysis, bump it up or down. The reason that I'm looking at 2%, or I use 2%, is because of the types of revenues that we have. Our sales tax, which is almost half of our revenue, we don't have a lot of room to grow new business, new tax generating businesses. Now, if people spend more, then obviously our current businesses will generate more. I'm concerned about internet sales. If we don't get the use tax, we're losing revenue. We don't get the sales tax on that. The other big source of revenue being our building permits, those permits and licenses. Without the space to grow in the city, those are more limited. Yes, people continue to remodel. People tear down old houses, build new ones. But the big money makers, those kind of big developments or big buildings, we don't have a lot of space left for those.
And
So-
Pam, I will interject, and Mike, I think it's a good point, but yeah, and obviously business license fees. We know we have vacant office space that hopefully will backfill, but many people are continuing to work from home. Some of those businesses aren't going to reoccupy. It's going to take a while for
Sure.
the office space to refill. And business license, and as Pam said, the sales tax are our bread and butter.
Okay. I agree.
But certainly we can tweak these numbers and look at them. Because right now what we're looking at, if you just compare revenue to expenditure each year, we're about almost 2 million kind of deficit. We're spending about 2 million, not quite, but getting close to 2 million a year more than what we're currently, with this estimate, bringing in. We can certainly tweak that and say, okay, if revenues come in higher, if the expenditures are a little lower, it just pushes us out farther, which we've done, obviously looked at in the past. We've kind of pushed things out. We weren't nearly 2020 was much better than we anticipated because we got the grant. There are things you don't know that are going to come in and it changes this. But just to try and get a really high overview of this just gives you kind of an order of magnitude, if nothing else.
Pam, I think your estimates are fine because historically, we have estimated very conservatively, because whatever the estimates are, we're not gonna hit them. It gives us what the trend is at that percent, and I think that's fine.
Can you go back to I just want to see the 2021 numbers again real quick to kind of compare to 22. So okay, that's what I'm looking for. This would be the 9.2 and the 10.6 would be the
Right.
would be the comparison, right, for 21. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
At some point, not now, but I just want to throw this out. We've had discussions before about the fact that we balance our budget. And as we move forward, I'd like for that to be clarified for everyone, how we've done that. So I guess, Bob, go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Pam, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, if we could move on to the next slide. Let's look at, start looking at the fire and EMS contract or options, sorry. Okay. So just a reminder of where we are with our current contract. And I think as everybody knows that this contract does expire at the end of the year. So our 2021 contract with West County Fire and EMS is approximately 3.6 million when you net out the rent that they pay us. That's in the general fund, so kind of operating cost there. The capital cost is approximately 168,000. That comes out of our capital fund. And then we also have the Creve Coeur Fire District, the Central Dispatch, for a total of approximately 4.3 million. And as you know, the contract currently is the West County is based on a CPI escalator. The Creve Coeur Fire is based on assessed value. Central Dispatch, I believe, is CPI. Okay, next slide.
Ask a question.
Yes, sir.
But right now, we're talking about the West County Fire District, right? We're not talking about Creve Coeur Central Dispatch, are we? In terms
No,
of,
we're not.
okay,
Those will continue on regardless of what we do.
okay.
The fire and EMS option 1 is continuing with our current contract, renovating the current fire station, using having to bond for about 1.5 million in order to pay for that. We would bond that over 15 years. We would add, or it wouldn't be our staff, but West County would add additional 3 staffing positions, which would be about $300,000 cost to us. And to continue funding the current equipment, which is, and Bob will have to tell me if I'm wrong here, I'm not really that clear on the equipment. So we're funding 1 pumper and 1 ambulance. We've already agreed that we need to pay an additional $40,000 per year to cover that equipment. So with option 1, with just renovating the current fire station, which adds more staff, that increases the cost to the city to about 4.6 million.
Pam, a quick question on that. Let me understand this. If we add 3 more staff, that each of those 3 staff start at 100,000 a year, or is there other costs that go into that?
That would
that's
be with benefits and everything, right?
right. That's what I think, Bob, that's Mr. Shelton said that's kind of what the ballpark quote they gave us. So that would probably include the people, whatever, other costs are associated with each person. So it might be training. I don't know if it would include like uniforms and things like that.
This is obviously an estimate, a plug number to try to get some, scope.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Well, so it doesn't include adding any additional equipment. And I'm just wondering, what does additional staff do if if the whole problem is they're on one call and then another call comes in and they don't have equipment to go to the other call?
So what this would do is what the station previously had, the level of service the city previously had was 4 on a pumper, 2 on an ambulance. At one point, the city said, reduce our expense, put 3 people on the pumper, 2 on the ambulance. So this would be 1 additional person per shift to provide additional service.
So what does that do? Get them through the call quicker?
Yeah, it's some standards for the international, and basically, I don't want to get into the fire business, but my understanding is when they go into a fire, they can have 2 go in at a time, 2 need to stay out in order for a rescue. If you only have 3 on your pumper, they can't go in, they have to wait for another pumper to arrive.
So the decision to reduce the staffing was made by the city, is that correct?
Correct.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
So Pam, a quick question. So it's going to cost us 4.3 million this year. And if we go with option 1, I guess this is then plug numbers for 2022.
Correct.
At that point, we go to 4.6 million. Is that the right way to think of
Right.
it?
And if you look at the next slide, I've got it broken down a little bit more. I know these are a lot of numbers, so bear with me. The top section is the section I already showed you. That's without the option 1 added in. So the second part of the slide shows the additional operating cost at 300,000 projected out, then the 5 years. The 137,000 then is the cost of the debt service for the bond issue. So that brings our increase up about 437,000 and then climbing each year. Brings our fund balance down to 5 million or only 44%, where we need to be at 50. So the additional revenue needed to get to the 50% level is 676,000 we would need a property tax. If we use property tax to close that gap, it would be about 7 cents would be what we would need.
Say that again, Pam. How do you get to the 7 cents?
It's looking at the total shortage, you know, what we would need to get our fund balance back to our 50% code requirement.
In other words, take the 44% up to 50%, we need 7 cents. Is that what that
Right.
says?
Exactly.
Thank
And then
you.
as you go out, assuming you didn't do it the one year, you decide, and then looking at the next year, if you didn't bring in any more additional revenue in 2022, by 2023, it would take you 26 cents to close that gap. And then you can just see that it just grows from there.
Can I ask, if you get annexed into the fire district, do they impose the tax on the residents?
Yes.
Okay,
And we do have our last slide
okay.
sort of talks about that. So this is option one. This is the cheapest option of the options we're going to go through so far. So that kind of shows you where we are with that. The next slide is option two. This option is, again, continuing with the contract. This is closing the current fire station and adding a new fire station using doing a bond issue for $7 million. We're still just adding 3 more staff because it's still one station. And we're the ladder. So then this is a switch in equipment, right? So we go to a ladder and an ambulance, and we have an additional cost of $90,000 per year for this option for the capital.
Exactly. So instead of what you currently have as a pumper and an ambulance, you would now have a ladder and an ambulance. So it's a little bit additional capital because the ladder truck is more expensive. No more staffing.
Okay. So annual cost to the city is now at 5.1. And then the next slide shows you, again, the kind of breakdown of those costs. So we have the same 300,000 in additional, and all of these, the options that I've got here are additional costs rather than total cost. That's why we were trying to give you a total cost in the prior slide. So these additional costs, now your bond payment annually is just over 600,000. So your fund, the estimated, your ending fund balance drops significantly more. Your shortage comes up to more like 1.4 million, and you need 14 cents of property tax in order to close that gap. And then project it out.
Pam, just a quick question. If we close the station, the current station, and we're going to 2, wouldn't we need 2 new stations? Or are we just closing this one, replacing it
So
by 1?
Hans, this scenario assumes you would just relocate the existing location to a little bit more central. We don't have a particular location, but you would close and sell the current station, just build 1 new station.
Those 1, okay.
Yeah, so it's just one station again. Okay, option, and we can come back to any of these, but let's try and get maybe through each option quickly.
May I ask
So-
one, can I ask a quick question? Looks like all of these are involve some kind of bond issue, right?
Correct.
Do the bond issues have to be approved by the residents?
You could do a certificate of participation, which would not require a vote, but you have to have a revenue source, which I would assume is going to require some kind of a tax in order to have that revenue source. But you wouldn't necessarily have to go out to a vote on that bond issue. Does that make sense, Oz?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that revenue participation thing means exactly, but
It's
We
just
talk
a, a term for really, it's a loan that you just pledge the full faith and credit of the city rather than setting a general, what they call a general obligation tax rate. A
Oh, what
general
you're saying-
obligation tax rate would have to go to a vote.
Okay, what I misunderstood then, that instead of a bond issue, you could go with the thing that you just mentioned, right, Bob?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's still considered a bond. It's just not a general
Right.
obligation bond.
okay.
We assume that interest rate at, just for the sake of numbers, 3.2%.
Right. So option 3 is keeping the current fire station and doing the renovations at 1.5, adding a new fire station using a $6 million bond issue, adding 18 more staff for a cost of approximately 1.8 million. Then the equipment then that we're funding is 1 ladder, 1 pumper, and 2 ambulances for an additional cost of $432,000 a year. So this option would cost the city approximately $9.2 million a year.
So are you adding a ladder, a pumper, and an ambulance, or we're now just still keeping one? You're adding a ladder and 1 ambulance. Is that what you're adding?
Exactly.
Right.
The new
Okay.
station would have a ladder and an ambulance.
All right.
And then the
Is there
next
a
slide.
location for the new station?
This anticipates that second station, in addition to your existing station, would go in the location of where our salt dome is, out there on Salt Mill at 141 and 64.
Okay.
And then this shows that, the additional operating cost there for the staffing, 1.8 million, bond debt service, approximately 650,000, dropping our ending fund balance in 2022 to just about 3 million, or then needing almost 3.4 million in order to get to our 50% fund balance reserve, needing 38 cents of property tax. And then we
This-
have option 3 light. So what this does is it reduces the option 3 by 1 ambulance, and therefore takes 3 staffing positions out, reduces our capital cost of 350,000 from that 432,000. And this cost to the city is approximately 7.1 million per year. And you
I
can
will
see in
just
the,
clarify on that one real quick, Pam, because the question has come up several times about why a second facility would have only a pumper and not an ambulance, since they run more EMS calls. And the model for fire departments in our area and elsewhere is to have a pumper with paramedics on it, who are your first responders in that second location. And then they can always call in an ambulance for transport.
okay, so this then shows our annual operating increase of the 1.2 million. Debt service, I think is basically the same, because there's no change to what we're bonding. Fund balance drops down to 3.6 as compared to, I think that's, as compared to 2.9. We would need then 29 cents of property tax to close the gap. Option 4 is the next one. And that's building 2 new stations, closing the current one, building 2 new. We would need a bond issue of about $11 million, adding 18 staff, which was the same as option 3. And then the equipment is the same also as option 3, the 1 pumper ladder and 2 ambulances. Cost to the city of $9.5 million per year. And the next slide shows the effect on the fund balance, bringing that down first year to approximately 2.7, and needing a property tax of 43 cents. So those are the main options with keeping our current contract with West County. And then we looked at option 5, which is joining the fire district. And I have to apologize. I was doing this, Bob and I decided to add this about 8:30 last night. So it doesn't have quite as much in here as I would have liked to give you. But what I've done is I've taken our beginning fund balance, and then the expenditures, you can see in 2022, I've dropped by 3.6 million to take out the West County contract. So that leaves us an ending fund balance without that contract in 2022 of about just over $9 million, or 127% of the comparison between expenditures. So it drops, not only, obviously it increases our fund balance because it reduces our expenditures, but also that 50%, the 50% level is lower because now it's only 50% of the 7 million as opposed to the almost 11 million we were at before. So we could reduce our fund balance by 5.5 million and still be at our 50% level. So so I just was showing the last line kind of is, if we took out the fire district contract, because we would no longer be paying that, the residents would be paying it, we could reduce our fund balance first year 5.5 million. And then if you look, so it's important to look at 23, 24, 25, and 26. So each year our revenues over our expenditures, the difference between the amount to get to 50% will kind of, what we could reduce each year decreases because our revenues, our expenditures are still going up a little bit, and we're still only estimating an increase in our revenues of 2% and 3% in our expenditures. So that amount each year will just, go down slightly. But this does show that, we could, we have this additional money that would be in fund balance, and I won't put words in Bob's mouth as to how we would deal with that.
Pam, just for a clarification, the second to the last line where it says amount could reduce for 50%. That
Right.
number, the 5.5 to 7.5, that's really the amount needed for your 50%.
No, because once we take out that fire district contract, you can see in that fund balance as a percentage of budget, we're way above the 50%. So we could reduce our fund balance by that number that's the second to the last number there.
So basically what you're saying is that if you get annexed into the fire district, they're going to charge what they need to charge to the residents for fire services. You're not going to have to do a property tax increase because you're not going to need it. You're going to have ample funds to continue your operations.
Correct.
Rather than, right.
It's also,
And
we're
what is the
gonna have,
cost per household? What is the cost per household under this option?
So we ran several scenarios, and assuming a house at $700,000, which is the median value in Town and Country, the current tax rate for the fire district is 91 cents. So that would be 1,210 to have a tax of 91 cents. It goes down in 2024 when they pay off some bonds to 84 cents. And so that would be 1,117 annually per household to join.
What do your neighboring cities do for fire services? Do they contract or are they annexed in?
So the city of Creve Coeur and then all of the cities west of us, so Chesterfield, Ellisville, Baldwin, are all in a fire district. And then most of the other cities outside of Creve Coeur to the east of us have municipal fire departments. So Frontenac, De Pere, Ladue, Richmond Heights, Brentwood, they all have municipal fire departments. And as we've talked, those have a fire safety sales tax. De Pere just increased theirs from 1/4 cent to 1/2 cent. That helps fund their fire service. We aren't allowed by state statute to have that fire safety sales tax. We're the only city that we are able to find that pays for all of this fire service out of their general fund. That doesn't have.
Why is it that you're not allowed to have that?
State statute says you must operate a municipal fire department in order to put that on the ballot, the fire safety sales tax on the ballot.
And we have worked for that for 2 years. Last year, COVID shut it down. This year, it didn't go anywhere, but it's really hard to get, not impossible, but it's more of a challenge than we've been able to conquer to get that. There's 4 words that would need to be added to statute to get that done.
Pam, that was an excellent presentation. And just to clarify, once again, what were the recommendations of the task force among these 5 options?
So the task force recommended looking at option 4 or 5. They're recommending that in order to serve the entire city and improve response times and have available equipment, that the city look at the 2 new stations. And as I mentioned, as I think you all are well aware, this is a subject of the board's retreat next week.
So based on that, this is as far as I've gotten with the numbers. So
what happened to the numbers?
so what we can put them back up if you need them, but we can also just kind of talk it through as to what you think, what other information you think needs to go to the board so that they can have an informed discussion about these options.
Well, obviously, to me, the board needs to understand the unique situation that the Town and Country has with respect to the fire services expenses. The fact that you don't have a separate tax for it like other ones that have their own stations. The fact that you don't have money to fund things going forward. So you're going to have to do something. And I don't feel like it's the responsibility of the city to have to say, hey, we have to start charging a property tax because we are out of money, because fire and EMS needs all these, they're telling you what they need. They're saying, and I guess they have their standards and everything, but you're beholden to what they're telling you they need. When when you do this, where you contract with them, you're gonna forever more gonna be beholden to what they tell you their costs are, and what, you know, they need to charge you for these costs. And the positive thing to me about being annexed is this is fire services that they are providing, and they are going out to the residents and saying, this is what we need to provide these services to you. And the city of Town and Country, you don't have control over that, and then you're not taking responsibility for that. Because you're gonna go do a property tax of 46 cents because that's what you can do without a vote, and it's still not gonna cover what they're going to charge you going forward. So I mean, then you're looking at going to the residents and saying, hey, we need more money for fire EMS, and you don't know where that's gonna end. I mean, that, in my opinion, you just don't know. That's never gonna end. Fire and EMS is gonna continually tell you they need more of this, they need more of that, they need this and that. I think that the board needs to look at the neighboring cities and see that how their fire and EMS is funded. So the ones that are doing their own, it sounds like they have a specific tax for it. The other ones are in a district. And the situation that we have here, to me, doesn't seem feasible for going forward, especially what's happened with COVID and everything. I mean.
Well, I've been in Ward 4 since Ward 4 was established. And Ward 4 is one that they keep talking about has inadequate service. And Town and Country now has less in terms of commercial because of COVID, and probably going to be a while before it fills up. There isn't much room for expansion in Town and Country. And so I question why any of the options other than one are on the table. Why do we need more than we have? I'm in the northern end of Ward 4 that they talk about as wholly inadequate service. We've had it several times in our area. Unfortunately, we had it once here and it was perfect. Why do we need more than option one?
Okay, I'll add kind of discussion, if it's okay, from the task force. And the members of the task force looked at the entire situation, coming from the point of almost where they were looking to make the optimal situation in their minds as far as protection for residents from fire and EMS. My comment and addition personally is, and there was some discussion, but it wasn't consistent throughout, was, we don't have that many fires. We have more EMS services that more of the calls are EMS than fires. It was then, we didn't separate a lot of that out with these options. So it was like, let's get it, let's quit. The perception was over the years, Town and Country has kind of been kicking the ball down the road. They were looking, and it was a group of people, maybe somewhat younger. They're looking for, in their minds, well, in my opinion, I think they were looking, not to put words in their mouth, for what they want the city to be able to, what they think the city should be able to do long-term. And so there was more of the movement for that, which I think is how they ended up as the task force with that recommendation.
I will just say that I haven't had a ton of emails on this topic, but I've had a certain number. The general, and not surprisingly, I guess, the general tone that I've gotten is that a couple thoughts are, hey, that firehouse we have right now doesn't look too bad to me.
Right.
Secondly, to the point that Sue made, hey, we don't really have a lot of fires in town and country, but we do have a lot of heart attacks and things like that. So why not put another ambulance, contract with Maryville University, et cetera, hire 3 paramedics and call it a day. And so we'll increase our costs marginally, but not double them. Other comments that I've gotten are that whether you join the district or not, the fire department is always going to want more stuff. So you're going to pay, have to deal with that, whether you're in a district or not in a district. So those are just and again, generally you don't get emails saying, boy, I would really like a big property tax, that kind of thing. So, but those are and like I said, I haven't had an overwhelming number, but that is the tenor of the comments that I've received so far. I think especially strong has been, that firehouse looks pretty nice to me. Just that has come through pretty clearly to me.
Not that old of a firehouse.
I'm sorry?
It's not that old of a.
Right. I think it's, Bob, correct me, is it 20 years old or a little more than 20? I think you're muted, Bob.
You're muted.
Sorry, yeah, fire station 20 years old? Was that the question?
Right.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Correct.
Which is not ancient.
And it's been renovated in the meantime too.
So what are the issues regarding the current firehouse by the fire district? What's their complaint?
The building is, compared to the more modern stations, the cost of utilities. So even though the city renovated, there's still, the construction of the building is block concrete, holds the heat in the summer, holds the cold in the winter. So their comparative cost, which we have in a PowerPoint for the board, is extensively higher than any of their other stations. And that's their expense, not our expense. So it's expensive to operate.
You say you have that in the PowerPoint for the board?
Yes, correct.
Can
We
you
give a
share
comparison
that
of you.
information with us?
Definitely, sure. They've gone over it many times, but yeah.
So Sue and Bob, what are we trying to do right now? I'm trying to see what would be most helpful. We've heard these 5 options. I mean, I think there's still plenty of questions on all of them, but I'm just thinking from a timing standpoint, what should we be doing right now?
It's my opinion, and Mayor, you correct me if I'm wrong. Any information that you all think would be helpful or clarifications on these slides from a financial standpoint to help the board or clarify the board, I think would be important from the Ways and Means.
I would agree with that. And any other random thoughts about it too. I mean, whatever. Yeah, but specifically at the finances, but other thoughts on it would taking when we get in front of the Board of Aldermen next week would be helpful. To have your input.
I do have a question about our southern border. My understanding is that the fire district has a station there on Manchester Road, right at our southern border.
Right.
Is that station able to service our southern border, or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a situation that whether it's there or other areas, if for some reason, let's say there's a major issue going on in Ward 1, and something dramatic happened in Ward 4, we have these reciprocal agreements for other stations, other municipalities, or through the fire district. They're there to chip, they help cross cover. So that's certainly something that's in place at current time.
Okay.
I did
Are
want to
you
correct. I
doing
just
a
looked up,
presentation? Oh, I'm sorry.
the fire station's 30 years old.
Okay, thank you.
Are you doing a presentation to the board of your total breakdown of your property tax and what the neighboring municipalities have for their taxes as far as? Okay.
Yep.
Well, in terms of what you said we were charged with this morning, in terms of providing the board with the financial implications of the 5 options, I think the presentation that was given is perfect. In terms of the recommendation of the board, of the task force, I don't know if we're here to discuss that or not, but I think the presentation for the board from the financial aspect is fine.
There's just one thing I'd like to add to the financial presentation, Pam. I think you've done a super job on this. This has really been very interesting. I'd like to see a comparison on one slide, options 1 through 4 or 5, whatever we have, of the bottom lines of each of these options.
I agree. That would be very helpful.
So I could see it all on one piece of paper, at least the bottom lines. Then I can always go back to the details of each option. And I'd like to have a copy, I'm sure other members would too, a copy of the whole presentation emailed to us.
I can work on that additional slide to do the summary. That makes sense.
Is the aldermen are doing a retreat this weekend coming up? I mean, starting in 2 or 3 days, or is it intended?
On the 23rd.
On the 23rd. So, okay, so in about a week. Would it be helpful if we had a recommendation? I mean, if we passed a motion now in terms of what we recommend. Again, I realize we've got somewhat limited information and some people might need more information, but would that be helpful? Because if so, I am willing to propose a motion.
I would assume, I mean, I would be very comfortable with that. I was the lone nay vote on the task force because I did not, I was coming from the perspective of Ways and Means. So I think that Ways and Means is and should be the respected commission recommendation. I do know that I believe the Fire and EMS or Police and Fire EMS Commission, Public Safety Commission had a presentation earlier, and I've not heard all of those discussions. Initially, I thought the presentations would do well for people in the Public Safety Commission to also hear the dialogue and the way that you all on Ways and Means analyze the outcomes, you know, the expectations in our finances. So however we can best give your recommendations, and I would think a motion from my point of view as an alderman, I would be very happy to take that to the retreat. Mayor, how do you feel about that?
I mean, yeah, I have no issue with that. I will say that in just sort of informal discussions with the Board of Aldermen, I think the feeling about this is kind of all over the place. I think I know one alderman who is like, why would we do anything differently than what we're doing right now, to other aldermen who are kind of all in on joining the fire district. So I think it'll be an interesting discussion next week, and that, like I said, I think there are feelings that are relatively strong one way and the other. And so, if this group after this meeting feels that they have a consensus or feel like they have a direction they want to give and take to the board, take to that retreat next week, I'd be more than happy to have that.
And especially for our two Ward 4 members of this commission, because I believe comments I've heard from many people was like, well, certainly for wards 2 and 3, it ain't broke. There are many in wards 1 and 4 who are less enthusiastic about that. They would like to see better response times. And that was one of the things the task force had many discussions about. How do you sell it? How do we move forward with the expectation of all residents in town and country having parity as far as their services?
But as playing a little devil's advocate, since public safety is not this committee's expertise, I would say.
Exactly.
Does it make sense for us to put forward a recommendation, or just make sure that the numbers that we lay out are fairly representative of the different options? I'm again a little concerned that our recommendation could be taken as again as an indication of that we feel we're experts in or have some kind of real good knowledge about this area.
Well, I think the Board of Aldermen will look at it and consider the source. And I don't think a recommendation by this group, which is composed of residents, obviously, from all wards, is inappropriate at all.
Okay.
Hans, were you going to make the recommendation?
Yeah, so I mean, based on that, again, with full caveats that we are not experts in this and that we're really looking from a financial, my recommendation, my motion would be that we endorse option 1, stay with what we have, make those improvements, spend $1.5 million, add the staff, but that the station, frankly, again, at least visually, looks to be in good order. We understand that some things need to be done. But based on financial projections, based on where we are, based on still a fair bit of uncertainty, I think the financially wise decision at this point is option number 1. So that would be.
I agree with you.
This Ward
I
4
agree.
resident will second that motion.
Yes.
Okay.
Any further
Um,
discussion?
So can I just ask a question? So if you go with option 1, you need 53 cents tax. And so are you saying by going with option 1, you're going to ask the voters to increase their taxes 53 cents? Or you're going to just try to do a 46 cents property tax that you're allowed to do? And I don't know how you're accounting for the shortfall. I'm sorry, what is that?
Well, I wasn't even getting into that issue at this point, right? I was just saying we're endorsing option 1 now. If that then gets approved and that's the direction we move in, we'll be getting more financial data over the next few months, few quarters. We'll know about that $2 million if that's coming in, and we'll have to kind of react to that, I guess, down the road. So I'm not making any comments on taxes at this point.
I agree with that. I don't think we should, because I think that's a separate discussion.
It is. Okay, so sorry, I've been kind of sitting here zoned out all morning. So we have had a motion, we have had a second. Do we want a roll call vote, or how about if we do a voice vote and see how we proceed? So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye or thumbs up.
This is right.
Okay, all
Aye.
those opposed, please signify by a nay.
I'm going to say nay.
Yeah, and we'll have 1 nay. Okay.
And that's option, we're talking about option 1 now, right?
Yes, option 1.
Okay.
Okay, so we have the ayes do have it. I think that's obvious. And so we will have that recommendation at least to go to the retreat for the board. I appreciate that discussions or this overall, and Pam, you've done a great job. I think this is exactly what what will help the board members to see the whole picture. And again, and all along, I felt that the whole, everything depends on the how we move forward with the public perception. At this point this year, if there was going to be a property tax, that has to go in front of the voters. If the options 4, 5, or let's see, option 5 to be annexed, that has to go to the voters. There's going to be what I believe we would have to determine based on what the Board of Aldermen comes up with. It needs to coincide with what the outcomes of any possible voting of a property tax or annexation. So there's still a lot to do, and we have about 6 months to come up with it. So
what you're saying is if you decide to be annexed, the voters have to approve you to be annexed?
yes,
If they said no, then you'd have to, would you say you're either going to be annexed at 98 cents or you're going to be, we're going to raise your taxes at $1.07? Okay. Is that how it would work? You give them choices?
I would think so. In one of my moments, I thought, okay, unfortunately, we can't put on the ballot, would you like A or would you like B? I don't believe. And that's the sense that, to me, that's the key sense that we have to come up with, because the message has to go out to the public where we are right now. And it's one or the other according to these projections. Bob, does that, or Pam, or do you agree with that? Or
I agree, you cannot put two options on the ballot, and Janine, you're correct. Even with option 1, there's a necessary revenue source. There's no, I think these numbers have shown we can't just continue on and not do something about the expense revenue issue.
And I mean, I don't mean to, I know I'm new to all this and I'm not up to speed on everything, but I think, just to clarify, the reason that I voted no was because I think option 1 to me kicks the can down the road. So I just feel like, from my perspective personally, if I'm gonna vote on something that has to do with this, I'd like to see us vote on something that completely solves the issue. So.
no, I agree. And that was really, I believe that's what the members of the force were looking for. But again, as we even saw last year with, what we saw with a minimal property tax, people didn't want that. Now it's a different year and big issues, and we have to move forward. But that's part of the challenge that we in the city have to help residents to know, so we're at a crossroads right now. We go one way or we go the other.
Bob Shelton, correct me if you would on timing. We have the option to extend this contract through 2022, do we not?
So, Mr. Prost, our current contract does go through 2022. By the end of 2021, we have to give the fire district notice if we wish to continue the service and negotiate. So we're using these numbers, and this also means we continue to pay for the dispatch. We continue to pay Creve Corps that $100,000 or whatever that rate is. And so what you're doing, this recommendation, if the board decides to move this way, you're saying we want to negotiate with the fire district to continue to provide these services out of one station. And just kind of for clarification, I think what Janine is saying is that under Pam's numbers, in year 2026, assuming you just do option one, you're at 92 cents with the city levying a property tax rate. And if you're in the fire district, immediately you're at 91 cents. And under the city doing it, you're kind of at the whim of the fire district. Just, I think that's that point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what term would this contract be, Bob? 5 years? Is that?
It would be a 5-year. I think there's some state laws that don't let you go any more than 5, but we've
But we can go less,
typically done a 5-year agreement.
but we can go less too. Is that correct?
If the fire district's willing, again, you have to reach a mutual agreement for these services.
May I ask a question about option 5? That's the, what's that one? Annexation one.
Annex.
You know, one of the things that slide didn't show, Pam, and maybe I missed it. Under option 5, wouldn't there be a rebate to the taxpayers for the expenditures that the city would no longer make for fire services?
Yes, so I'll jump in there.
And that's not shown on that slide, right? Yeah.
Pam
okay.
does show an excess revenue over your 50%. And I don't know exactly how that would be rebated or reduced for the tax to all taxpayers in the city. And that would obviously be something on an annual basis that the Ways and Means Committee would weigh in. What's your surplus revenue?
Is there such a thing as a negative tax rate?
Well, you wouldn't have a negative tax rate. You would either pay into the county and they would reduce the rate that would go out from the fire district. Because Oz is talking about option number 5.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway,
So you would
gotta
reduce
get
or
some
rebate.
amount of money back to the taxpayers for the excess that is in the rate due to expenditures not being expended. Right? That's
Correct. And to be honest, I don't know technically how you would do that. You
But it
would
can be
either have
done.
to figure out. I'm sure it could be done. Well, I shouldn't say I'm sure. I would imagine there's some way. Go
But
ahead.
you're saying that, Bob, you're saying that if we annexed and the Board of Aldermen decided, they could say, hey, we're going to give $2 million to the fire and EMS so that when they send out the bills to the residents, it's going to be the net of that.
Yeah, that's the concept. The technical difficulty is St. Louis County sends out those property tax bills. The fire district doesn't. So somehow you would have to work with the county to get that rate reduced by whatever the city would contribute. And
Yeah, I've never heard of that happening. That's interesting.
but
That's
yeah,
But I think the residents would expect it. You're taxing us for money you're not expending. But anyway,
Well, and that's another discussion. So I believe,
well, let me ask you a question. Is this recommendation considered final? Or do we have an option at a later date after your discussion with the board to come back and say, we can refine this a little bit?
Well, I think nothing is ever final. Yeah, I mean, I would think that you could certainly reconvene and revisit the issue at your convenience.
I believe that within the discussions at this point in time, this is a recommendation. And there are many moving parts and, this is a good starting place. But it's going to come down, I believe, Bob or Mayor, it'll come down to what the board chooses to do.
sure. Correct.
I have a comment about Pam's projections. I think they're excellent. And one of the reasons I think they're excellent is because I think they are maybe a little conservative on revenues. And as we were going through those numbers, I couldn't help but wonder, okay, if our revenues do recover more quickly, what would the numbers look like. And I could see Alderman asking that same question. The numbers are scary, the way they're projected. So I think it's an excellent presentation. If you were going to do any more work on it, that might be the area that I would tweak.
Thank you.
And I would like to say, we've had discussions, and I'm sorry, I'm just with the mayor and individuals, and we're going to do the best we can as elected officials and a team to hope to have positive impacts for the finances of the city in every way. Okay, well, if we have the recommendation, thank you all. And then we will have our retreat on the 23rd in the afternoon. I could anticipate we'd have more than one discussion about that. And I think at this point, if we have no further comments, I appreciate everyone's great comments and everything. Again, I am so sorry this morning. I was in a different place mentally. I was with a 12-year-old. So would we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
We have that, Mr. Probst, and seconded by,
Second.
I second.
okay. Thank you all. And thank you, Hans, for getting it going. It's so great to have a vice chairman. Thank you, Mayor. Welcome.
All right, thank you.
I appreciate your feedback, and Pam, and I know Joan, you all worked very hard on this
Yeah,
presentation.
very good presentation. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's been great working with all of you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Good luck to you,
I will
Pam.
say
Thank
Pam
you.
retired on Friday, and as she stated, I was calling her last night at 8:30 at night.
Yeah.
So, thanks to
I don't think she's getting away anytime soon.
No,
No.
that's all right with me.
We
Have a
know
good day.
it's busy over
Good
at City Hall, and thank you all.
All right, goodbye.